Good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar, Outlook 2022, the role of the airports in developing tourism destinations. I'm Leonard Berberi, journalist at the Italian daily Corriere della Sera. We will discuss a lot of issues today in this second year of the pandemic, and we will discuss what happened till today, but we will discuss also what is going on, especially for the next summer, as the title of this webinar. This webinar will be in English, we will try to, and we have a lot of guests. Joining us today from Olbia, Sardinia, Silvio Pippobello, Chief Executive Officer of Olbia Airport, Fabio Gallo, Chief Financial Officer and Business Development Director at Alghero Airport, and Mario Garau, Routes Development Manager at Olbia Airport. But we have also people from all around Europe. Joining us from London, Andrew van der Vels, Global Senior Director, Business Development at Expedia Media Solutions. Joining us from Athens, Greece, Ioanna Papadopoulou, Director of Communications and Airline Marketing at Athens Airport. Joining us from Malta, Sandy Vella, Traffic Development Manager at Malta International Airport. And last but not least, joining us from Brussels, Virginia Lee, Director Media and Communications at Airport Council International Europe. As you heard, we have a lot of people with a lot of tasks and a lot of issues to discuss in this webinar, but we will start with Mr. Silvio Pippobello, CEO of Olbia Airport, and Fabio Gallo, CFO and Business Development Director at Alghero Airport for an introduction and presentation.
Okay.
Silvio?
Yeah, thank you, Leonard. It's not an introduction, it's just the possibility to thank you very much, everybody. I'm very happy for this webinar, which is the first, I think, international webinar that we organize here in Olbia. We have this possibility to have everybody connected, and thanks to the technology. So thank you very much, Leonard. Thank you very much to all the speakers that joined this morning. And I think that they will share with us very interesting, very important data. I want also to thank very much Sardinia region, which is the main sponsor of this event. And I also want to thank very much Aci Aeroporti and Aci Europe that collaborate with us to organize the webinar. What to say is a crucial moment for our airport. We are preparing the summer season, the next summer season. So we are very interested to learn something from the speakers. We just finished a positive year, and I must say that we still are missing 1 million passengers in our airport to complete the recovery after the pandemic. But I think we have the possibility, we have the potential to close this gap in 2022. But we need something. We need a common effort, a joint effort with all the stakeholders, because we have to retain the tourists that we had this year, and we need even to increase and to have new visitors for the future. We know that the key success for a destination is the cooperation between the stakeholders, because we need to identify possibilities, we need to see the objectives, and also we need to have a common strategy. So we did a good job so far, but we need to have a more structured destination, because the market is changing, the market is evolving very fast, and there are new things on the market. There is a new client, I would say, very young, the millennials, the Gen X client, and we have also to put a strong attention to the sustainability. So I think that from our speakers, we will see very interesting ideas, because the operators need to have suggestions, to have data, to have ideas. And I think also that the two airports which are connected to this webinar, Malta and Greek Athene Airport, are a very good, say, benchmark market for us, because in some way they are similar to us. They have the same kind of market, let's say. So I think that we could end up this webinar with new ideas, new inspirations, and everything that could help us to have a better promotion of the destination. So thank you very much to all, and have a good webinar.
Thank you very much, Silvio Pipobello, CEO of Olbia Airport. I hand the word to Fabio Gallo, CFO and Business Development Director at Alghero Airport.
Good morning to everybody. Well, thank you for the invitation to this event that, as Mr. Pipobello said, I find very interesting, because it's pretty clear that over the last 10-15 years, the role of airports in general has changed a lot, because the airport is not anymore just an infrastructure that allow carriers and tourists to travel and to join many destinations, one destination from another. But the airport, as of today, has to play an important role, a primary role in the destination management process. And in this sense, I believe that to implement a successful strategy, especially for airports that are seasonal airports like Olbia, like Alghero, and like the other two airports that are taking part to this webinar, it is important that we have to implement a successful strategy. It is important that the airport play a role in the chain of that has to be built among all the stakeholders of a particular territory. In this sense, for example, here in Sardinia, in the last 3-4 years, especially in the 2 years before the pandemic period, we started to cooperate a lot among all the management companies and also with the Regione Sardinia, in order to start to create a strategy, a common strategy, to improve the potential of the territory of the Sardinia in general. We believe that we also obtain very good results, and obviously, considering the pandemic period, is difficult to analyze all the data that we have at the moment. But it is important to consider that, for example, for the summer season 2021, all the 3 airports in Sardinia reached 90-95% of the traffic that we experienced in 2019, so it means before the pandemic period. We believe that obviously this result is not only the consequence of all the actions that we implemented to cooperate together, but we do strongly believe that what we did together to cooperate played an important role to reach these successful results. So in this sense, I'm strongly convinced that it's important to hear what, as Mr. Pipobello just said, it's important to hear what other airports are trying to do, and how they are evolving in the strategy, in the destination management process strategy, and how the professional operator like Expedia are, what are they doing to help all the airports in this process. So thank you very much again, and it will be a pleasure to listen to all the other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio Gallo, CFO and Business Development Director at Alghero Airport. So let's involve Andrew van der Vels, Global Senior Director of Business Development at Expedia Media Solutions, because you were mentioned by Mr. Fabio Gallo, and if you can help us also to know where are we now in the second year of the pandemic, and what do you see for the future? Of course, it's a future that depends a lot of how this pandemic is going on and is going to evolve.
Thank you, Leonardo. And thank you for the introduction as well. Just before I get started, just also from my own perspective, my background, maybe to give it a little bit of color as well. So I've been with Expedia for just under 6 years. Prior to that, I had just over 2 decades working for 2 national tourism boards, the Dutch National, the NBTC, and the Scottish Tourism Board. Both, why I am referencing them, they are both destinations that have been very closely linked in cooperation with the airports for over 10 years. And I was involved with, for example, Schiphol Airport at the time, and the importance of destination and airport working together has been key in the success of these airports over the generations, not just in terms of destination marketing, but also route development and route growth as you drive into the marketplaces. So just a bit of context, but let me then focus on what I do today and give some sort of, I'm trying to capture that in a small presentation of about 10 slides, just to give a bit of color so that the discussion can flow from there. It starts with a global picture, and then I'll bring it a little bit more into Sardinia specifically. Let me just share my screen so we can start that process. Let me know if this is all visible.
Yes.
Perfect. Then I will change it so that we can. Is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Perfect.
Go on. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, so let me start by pointing out, just before we came on, we were talking about, I think it was revenge travel, which is a thing out there. And why is that? Is that because there has been this 2-year period of pent-up demand. What you're looking at here is a survey that we do on our own site throughout the period, the last 2 years for sure, and that is asking people when they're on our site to explain a little bit to what they are actually doing at that particular moment. So it's an intercept survey. So whilst they're on our platform, we ask them, and there's 20-odd thousand being interviewed on a regular basis to get the information that allows us to see what they are actually doing on the intent behind the decisions that they're making. And what you have here, and I'll go through the slides so that it's a little bit more information, is going right back to April 20, so right at the beginning, if you like, of the pandemic, March, April of 2020. And you can see here it starts quite high in that cancel, change, and checking of statuses. So this is obviously, we all saw that during the beginning of the pandemic as customers, travelers started canceling, changing their bookings, and checking their status. And so you see that continue for a fairly lengthy period as everyone scrambled at the time to readjust. But then it bottoms out and around about the August period of last year as things started settling down. And obviously at that point, we also started, ourselves included, but also all other operators and carriers as well, starting to rebuild that confidence in travel by looking at that cancellation policies, refund policies, so that confidence slowly came back with a very important aspect, and I'll touch on that later on in terms of the booking windows, in terms of giving that confidence back to travelers to think about travel again. Although, as we all know, it wasn't terribly possible beyond domestic for large chunks of that period. And then you see at the yellow line there is like the shopping. So what were they doing on our site? Now this very much flattened out for a few months, but then rapidly again, just before the summer last year, started growing again. Now, albeit these are based on smaller numbers, what we did see is a regrowth in terms of people shopping on our site for travel. There's perhaps an overused terminology, which is water finds a way, and travel consumers will also find a way, whether they readjust towards domestic travel, they adjust from hotels to self-catering. Now, we saw throughout that entire period that families were getting together, friends were getting together when they could, and then staying in self-catering accommodation with our brand there, Verbo, growing actually in that period over the 19 figures as well. So there was an adjustment, but we saw that shopping come back. And then at the top, you see the light blue line, which is the dreaming phase. So this inspirational search for travel, that never went away. In fact, it grew at certain periods as people really started dreaming and thinking about where those holidays were to be taken coming out of the future. And we carried out a campaign during that period where we were asking people where they would go next, and that gave us an indication of what their interests were. And that is very important from a destination point of view. And very few, and not too many destinations throughout that pandemic or throughout the pandemic have remained visible. And those that have remained visible and didn't go dark to an audience that was actually still looking for inspiration are the ones that have captured a lot of that market share from others that inevitably went dark because of government restrictions in terms of saying, you know, we shouldn't be promoting, we shouldn't be out there. It was more to do not about promoting, but about being visible for those who are still dreaming and wanting to travel at some given point. So there's a very important aspect to, and the learning effectively as we go forward in terms of reactions from destinations in particular towards visibility during a pandemic or through a crisis. Again, these are from global perspectives. As I mentioned, we have a huge amount of data. In fact, we have around about 300 petabytes of data, which we can sort of cut either way. Again, working with a lot of our partners is we provide our partners with the data that is specific to their region, their city, their destination to allow them to sort of help with their strategies to go forward. What I'm trying to pull out here is that international demand, and we'll see that also with the booking windows a little later on, is for the first time in during the pandemic, if you like, in the last part of last quarter, we started seeing that international search was starting to outstrip domestic search, which is the first time we've seen that really out. We saw international come back, but never outstripping that domestic search from a global perspective, which is a very strengthening look at the way forward, that really that we're seeing that confidence come back. We can see that with the vaccination rollout, and you'll see that obviously with as the vaccines are rolled out, you see that confidence come back. So the international demand is coming back as well. When they're traveling is obviously the key factor here, and that booking window will be what we'll be looking at next. But important to understand that we have a change in the way that the consumers are starting to search more externally from their own countries. And then, as I mentioned here, the booking window. So going through these, this graph, this slide, you can see here going back from the beginning of this year to effectively just the end of September this year, the look at the booking windows. Now, the top one, which is the most dominant, is this 0 to 21 day booking window. So we have seen this as a constant number. It was always there, but never quite to that extreme that we've seen it. This is to do with, obviously, in particular with the domestic side of things, it becomes more opportunistic in terms of the booking way of searching for your travel and then booking it, and also reacting to the changes in circumstances around destinations, lockdowns, reopening, and therefore the consumer, as I mentioned earlier on, becomes more adept at finding ways to travel. And if we go back to last summer, when Portugal was open from the UK, for example, there were huge amounts of booking during that summer period, but then Portugal shut down. Now, it didn't mean that people didn't go on holiday, they just moved and they went to other destinations such as Spain that was still open to the UK at that particular moment. So that booking window has been very short throughout the entire period. And then you have, like at the bottom here, the mix of sort of 22 plus days. The interesting one here is the 61 to 90 days. We're starting to see that spike up now. And if you take this down to specific regions around the world, you'll see that spike a lot sharper. This is dulled down to a great extent by obviously the APAC region, which really hasn't opened up to international traffic, and therefore you won't see those spikes in long-term or long booking windows there. But it is an indication that people are now planning, and it's interesting to hear from my two colleagues earlier on that we're looking now towards the summer 2022, and really that 180-day plus booking window is one which we're starting to see that that spike come up as people really start thinking about booking their travel for next season. So important again when you're looking at destinations is not just the that short-term window, but also with the opportunities that are already out there, and taking into consideration that this pent-up demand has been out there. With lack of visibility from a destination, the likelihood are these consumers will start booking based on what they know, as opposed to what they are being offered to experience something new. And if you're trying to approach and get a new audience, it's going to be terribly important to be actually in front of that audience as they start searching and thinking about that travel for next season. Quick snapshot then diving into Sardinia. When we sort of pulled the data on Sardinia, these were the sort of top elements that we pulled out. So over 2/3, almost 70% are of the international searches were for accommodation, which is again a strong sign that there's an indication, a strong indication that they are looking for that travel and business into Sardinia. The US market, obviously, since the 8th of November, opening itself up again, and therefore that confidence coming back in terms of US travel into other parts of the world, in particular EMEA, is driving a lot of this international search. You can see here, and I'll touch on that in the next slide as well, 53% of our international searches are made on mobile devices. So to Mr. Pipobello's point earlier on, if you're looking to get a younger audience, we have this audience that is being more adept in being on mobile devices and doing the searching and booking on mobile devices. So it's interesting to see that that is growing, and is very much in line for Sardinia as it is for a global view. And then 48% of the international searches were for, as I say, that longer booking window. So they are looking at next year. So from sort of that March, April period into the summertime as well. And then Olbia was the #1 city search for by the international customers. So I just quickly touch on the search devices. So as I mentioned, 53% is on mobile, whether it's in our app or on mobile devices through a browser, with the remaining with desktop at 32%, and then the remaining obviously on tablet and other devices, well, covering it. But it's very important again here, when you start thinking about strategies for marketing a destination, is to take into consideration which markets, which audience, how are they booking, when are they booking, how do I reach them, what's the content, what's the message that I'm getting across to them, because they all add up to actually being more targeted in your approach to speak to them. And obviously we have all those tools, if you like, to be able to work and help and develop the strategies for reaching the audiences as you see them, and based on where we are seeing the audiences search for your destination. And then here, this is a growth percentage as opposed to total percentages, but it's again reflecting that the international growth for searches for Sardinia are now outstripping the domestic. Now, obviously, it's from more base numbers, but from a quarter-on-quarter growth, you see the growth from domestic searches going up just under 10%, but the international well over 40% growth in searches in that same period. So it is a very strong signal that Sardinia is on the international search growth, and it's time to obviously speak to that audience and try and convert as much of that business, because there is a big gap between the search and the actual booking at the end of the day. Search is obviously comparison and looking for that inspiration. When we look at the top feeder markets currently that are searching for Sardinia, this is what we're picking out of the data. So you can see the top one is France, followed by the US, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. That is the current status. When you look at, again, quarter on quarter, what is growing the fastest, then Germany comes to the top. So although it's in third position in terms of real absolute search numbers right now, it is the fastest growing one as they start searching for their trips. And this is all predominantly leisure, incidentally. I think we all know this. Business travel isn't something that has rebounded yet. It's still very much in its infancy. And then France, US, Switzerland, and the UK coming in there as well as they start thinking about next season's holidays. When when we look at international booking windows for Sardinia, you can see here a comparison from pre-COVID to the pandemic right now, or as we go into Q3 2021, that 0 to 13 day has increased. So it has become even more. It was already quite a dominant one in terms of Sardinia in our books, and of course we are one operator. There's multitude of them out there, of course. So we can only give a snapshot of what we're seeing on our platform. But we've seen, obviously, from that perspective, that the 0 to 13 day has continued to grow. So very short booking windows. This will be led by predominantly a domestic search in that, if we were to dive into those numbers a little bit more in depth. And then what is interesting, though, is that we are seeing that growth from our perspective of a longer booking window coming back as well, as I say, the 91+ days. There are two extremes when you put that. So that's an aggregated view of it. The two extremes are the shorter booking window and that longer booking window. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise if I was to give you the feeder market number 2, I would suspect that would probably be the US market, where actually there is that much longer period of search to booking. But it is important, again, to understand when you are putting your strategies that there's not any one strategy fits all markets. It's important to understand the differences by market, the booking windows by market, and also, as I mentioned earlier on, the content that is needed to entice different markets and audiences within those markets to travel to a destination. A couple of last slides before I hand it back over. It continues to be a fluctuating picture. So, and it is determined by a great amount by not necessarily promotion or destination management, but by what is being put out there by governments in terms of policies, whether it is the vaccination rollout and the acceleration of the booster program that is going on right now in many destinations around the world, to also the lockdowns that are being put back into place, or health checks that are being, I mean, I just returned myself from Seattle at the end of last week. Whilst I was there, there was a whole change in the testing to come back into the UK, from not having to test to then having to do a test within 48 hours. The other way around, it's 24 hours. So there is a lot of confusion in the consumer, and we're in the business, so we should get used to it. But you can imagine how confusing it is for travelers who haven't traveled for 2 years to understand which tests, which policies to follow to go to which destinations, because they are incredibly different to each market where you're coming from. It's important to understand that as well, and help the travelers make those decisions. And make it easier for them to actually make that booking, and not to help by adding extra weight to that confusion. And then I added this slide very quickly at the end because I heard the word sustainability. It is a catchphrase at the moment, and it's a dichotomy in a lot of cases where sustainability has to come back into the messaging, but there's also that mix between, let's get the traffic back, let's get the people traveling again, and then let's think about sustainability. In my opinion, I think we need to bring it back now in a sustainable, so the traffic needs to come back, but we need to already build right from the beginning in a sustainable way. Why is that important? Because you can see here that the Generation Z and the millennials, and you have the alphas that are coming in there who also have an influence in a decision-making process. And these are those born after 2010 or 2010 onwards. They have a strong influence in the family destination choices, believe it or not. And therefore, it is incredibly important to get this messaging already into the promotion, the messaging around the destination itself. It's incredibly important to understand also what you mean by sustainability, because it can be cultural, it can be social, it can be social, it can be environmental, or it can be ecology. So when we talk about sustainability, what is it that we are talking about? For sure, the younger generations take it upon themselves to actually book and think about, when they travel, about the sustainable nature. And in the same research that we carried out with this one, which was external and not on our own platform, it's about intent and behavior. 60% of the audience, and particularly Generation Z and millennials, were prepared to spend more if their travel had a sustainable element involved in it, with that, I will hand it back over, and I hope that was useful.
Thank you, Andrew van der Vels, and interesting numbers. And I want to discuss directly with Mario Garau, Rules Development Manager at Olbia Airport, because I know that you also have some numbers, and I'm curious to know how you put in a context the numbers that Andrew van der Vels explained us also for the near future. Mario?
Hi, Leonard. Good day. Good day to everybody. A special thanks, first of all, also to the ladies that joined us today, because this was very important, and to Andrew as well. And also to Aci Aeroporti, also Manuela Bonsante that helped us out to gather all the data and to make this webinar possible. I don't have a lot of figures today. I mean, maybe it's the first time, but I will have a presentation that I would like to share with you regarding the role of the airports in destination management. And I would like to start taking inspiration from the speech of Silvio and Fabio that just stated that the role of the airport has changed in the last 20 years, let's say. Before the deregulation, airports were just an infrastructure where the management company had to deal with the airlines and to be sure that everything was doing in a safety way and all the operation went smoothly. But afterwards, we realized that we are part of a wider organization, a wider process. And especially we are a part of the destination. In Italy, we have to consider that more than 70% of the GDP comes from tourism and airports because they are both very connected. And in Sardinia, even more. Here in Olbia, 85% of our passengers are leisure passengers. So we realized that our role wasn't just an operational role, but we needed to somehow have an active role within a destination. And we have changed our strategy accordingly, and also our organization. So the routes development team, I think, started the airport started to have a routes development team and business development team 10 years ago. Before, just to make some business intelligence and to deal with the airlines, but afterwards they evolved, and airports started to have a marketing and communication and a social media team and doing events and producing marketing content. We will see what we do here in Olbia. Why this? Because of course we have different stakeholders. In the past we had airlines and passengers, the two primary customers. Airlines are the direct customers and passengers are indirect, but they were the first two stakeholders. And afterwards the airports had to deal also with the other stakeholders in order to help them out to build a destination and to build the value proposition of a destination. So as you can see here, this is a map of the airport business development team that is divided between the routes development and the marketing communication, and they have different they make different activities, and they are linked somehow with all the stakeholders. As you can see, for instance, if we have a look on routes development, we do an intensive business intelligence, not like Expedia, but of course we have a huge amount of data, and our objective is to share this data also with the airlines, but also with the local stakeholders, because together we build up strategies and we define the objectives, and we identify which are the main markets, for instance, with the regional government, with the Chamber of Commerces, with the Hotel Association, and so on. Then we have the sales and development, meaning the part of the organization that has to negotiate with the airlines to define the incentive, which are a very important part of all the system, because somehow drive the airlines and gives the possibility to open new routes and to develop the traffic. And then the marketing communication. Marketing and communication that create the events for the passengers, so deals with the airlines, but elaborate joint promotion activities, and we will see some examples with the other local stakeholders, and also make some events that are directly addressed to the passengers. So as you can see here, it's becoming more and more complex, and the airports are becoming a part of a wider destination. When we started to analyze the context and when we started to define our strategy, we started from the, let's say, customer and tourist journey map. So what is the process of a tourist coming to Sardinia, and which are the steps that we have when he decides, and afterwards he books and he comes to Sardinia. Of course, it starts with this inspiration. I think it's the moment that is somehow linked with the blue curve that we've seen in Andrew's presentation. So the moment when the customer is starting to dream about their holiday. So looks back at social medias, talks and discusses with family and friends, and this is a moment when he gets inspired. Afterwards, he decides and he search for hotels and car rentals and all the parts of its vacation, and uses platform, of course, to compare, aggregate, and after the COVID, he sees for the travel restrictions and so on. Then we have the booking, the pre-trip. Pre-trip means the moment when the customer and the tourist has already decided where to go, but has to fine-tuning its holiday. So plans activities, books restaurants, and so on. Then we have the in-trip. So when he arrives at the airport, and this is the moment when airports have a very important role, because we have the customer here, and then we have the post and next trip. So when he returns home. So we have different touch points for each part, and different stakeholders involved in this process. And what we have trying to do it's to assess and analyze how the airport is involved in this process. And as you can see, as regards to Olbia, for instance, for the inspirational part, we have a high role and an active role. Through many touch points like our social medias, but also because we organize together with our other stakeholders the promotion of the experiences and the promotion of our destination. So we will see some examples. We go to the trade fairs, we invite journalists just to get inspired the tourists. In the search, we have slightly we are less involved, and also in the booking, but somehow we have a role. In the pre-trip, we use our website and we use our social media to help the customer and the tourist to organize its vacation. And of course, during in-trip, we have several moments when we can interact with the passengers. And also when he gets back home, we try to retain this customer. And also another important thing is to use all the metrics and all the KPIs that we have collected and share it with the other stakeholders in order to fine-tune our strategy. So starting from the inspiration, let's say the press trip are one of the key activities that the airports and all the airports together, also with Alghero and Cagliari, we realized several press trips together. So the task of the airport is to identify the strategic markets, organize and follow the press trip. When the journalists, they come to Sardinia, we make sure that their trip is as smooth as possible, and especially we manage the follow-up. The stakeholder involved here are airlines, hotels, restaurant, and association, and we do this sort of activities twice a year. Let's say we can see some example of sustainable Sardinia because we invited a journalist, a blogger, an influencer in cooperation with EasyJet that wanted to discover the sustainable Sardinia. So the part of our destination of our offer that it's somehow related to the sustainability. The promotion of local experience. So we have several events and experiences that are organized by either Chamber of Commerce, regional government, or local municipalities. We cooperate with them in order to create marketing campaign, and sometimes we involve the airlines in order to use their media to promote this local experience. And I can say that this was a very effective activity because we've seen that, for instance, Transavia with the Amsterdam flight, it helped to increase the load factor during the winter season. You know that our objective is to reduce the seasonality. So this was a very interesting activity. The promotional with the regional government, like this webinar is an example. So we try to deal and to work with all the other stakeholders in order to make webinars and let's say moment where we can share ideas and best practice in order to increase the knowledge of our stakeholders. And so we promote also Sardinia with other airport channels and organize, for instance, awards and promotional events here at the airport. In market promotion, this was another interesting activity that we did in order to inspire and get inspired the customers. We went in several European cities to promote in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce, local Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Commerce of the related markets to promote the flights and to promote the tradition of Sardinia. Tourism trade fairs, newsletter and social media. So we have an extended and very big database that we use in order to promote the destination to our customers. For the search and bookings, we've seen that we are not very involved in this, but we use our some touch points. Like we have a dedicated search page in our website where the tourist could, you know, somehow identify the right flights and the right airlines to come to Sardinia. For the booking, we have an interesting cooperation, and we signed several agreements with aggregator and online travel agencies in order to sell with white labels hotels, flights, and car rentals. This was another interesting activities that we did in the past. For the pre-trip, we intensively use social media. We have an accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. That it's more for the generation X rather than also millennials. I don't think they are very used with this new social media. And we make dedicated posts in order to promote the local experience. And these posts are addressed to those passengers that have already booked their vacation, but they don't know what to do exactly when they will arrive in Sardinia. In trip, this is the moment when we have the opportunity to deal with the passenger. So airports events. So we organize special deliveries for new flights with folks group and local folks bands. We distribute flights, and we have the airport angels that not only gives information regarding the airports, but also about the destination. So what they can do when we arrive here. And also we use the airport Wi-Fi to gather data through the airport Wi-Fi subscription. Last but not least, after the next trip, we work intensively with the stakeholders. So we organize meetings and strategy meetings every 3 months. And we have dedicated area in our website where we upload all the statistics, information, analysis, all the presentation. Also, this one will be uploaded to this this portal where all the stakeholders, hotel, restaurants, they can download it and make their own analysis in order to elaborate their own corporate strategy. I just want to finish with a brief video to show you what we do. For instance, when we have an inaugural flight and how we welcome the passengers when they arrive in Sardinia.
Okay,
right.
Mario.
Thank you very much.
We have to move fast because Ioanna Papadopoulou from Athens has an important event, so we have to move faster to move to Athens because Ioanna Papadopoulou, Director of Communications and Airline Marketing at Athens Airport, she will give us a brief presentation. Sorry, Ioanna, we are running a little bit late, and I know that you are busy in 10-15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Leonard. I would like to thank you very much for the invitation and offering the opportunity to share our efforts in destination marketing strategy throughout the years. Apologies, I will have to leave in a quarter of an hour approximately, and just to give the optimistic note, this is the first in-person press event that we are organizing today for an airline, for Emirates, in a venue downtown Athens. So this is good news on one part. The other, well, I will have to leave, and please excuse me for that. I hope you can see my screen. Yes. Okay, so we used to say in the airport that we follow the ABC marketing strategy, but and this practically means the airport interacting with all the primary stakeholders, airlines, business partners, consumers, and the general public. And actually, as Mario described in detail just before, all the actions with the airlines, with the route development, with airline marketing, this was a wide range of events and activities in order to support the destination. But at some point, approximately in 2010, 2011, we thought that we had to move towards a more active, let's say, role in destination marketing and trying to cooperate with other stakeholders in order somehow to not only to cooperate, but formulate destination marketing strategy. And this is how we came up with D in our strategic actions. If you probably wonder why 2011, well, you probably remember that from 2010 to 2013, these were the more difficult years with the Greek macroeconomic crisis at the time. So Athens was making the news, but for all the wrong reasons back then. So the image of the city was tarnished, the brand was severely damaged. So we considered that we had to move towards this direction. And on top of that, obviously, as you can imagine, we had international traffic with sharp declines back then. And this is how we proceeded with that. I will try just to guide you through the evolution of destination marketing from 2011 onwards in our airport. So we started off with communication tools back in 2010, a specific section in our then new website, Landing in Athens. We have the Airport magazine, and out of the 4 issues within a year, one of them is dedicated to Athens, which is the red to board issue. But of course, in all the other issues, we promote Athens as a destination. And at some point, early in that decade, we had a refurbishment of our terminal premises, especially what we call the bus gate, which is the lower level of the departures. And there we tried to promote Athens through the 3-dimensional images and photos of Athens by Greek renowned photographers. Second, they were the tailor-made products and thematic projects from 2011 onwards. So in destination marketing, we say that we, on the one hand, we try to promote the destination and have destination awareness campaigns. On the other, one of the basic elements there and basic lines of action is to try and have tailor-made products for the visitors of the city or thematic projects. And this is what we did from 2011 onwards. So the Athens Spotlight that you see there is the city card that we introduced for our foreign visitors in 2011, offering substantial discounts to the people visiting the city in 150 spots, museums, restaurants, cultural sites, and so on and so forth in the center of Athens. And of course, other thematic projects, for instance, trying to internationally promote specific events. I have here the Authentic Marathon of Athens, but many others as well that were being held throughout the year. Important to note the layer number 3, which was and is the targeted partnerships with airlines. As Mario said, yes, of course, there are always targeted partnerships with airlines, but normally we had a 2-fold strategy up to then. We were promoting the airport to the airlines and the airlines to the wider public, and thus trying to find the new, let's say, sources of growth and develop new routes, connections, frequencies, and so on. As of 2012, we added a destination targeted partnerships with the airlines, especially with the home-based carriers, them being the ambassadors of the destination. This is how we called them, so we proceeded with destination marketing campaigns at that particular moment in time. And then, of course, from 2014 up to 2016, tourism stakeholders partnerships. An important point in time was the establishment of Marketing Greece. This is a non-profit, a private organization that was established in 2013 from the Association of Travel Enterprises in Greece and the Association of Hoteliers. All the stakeholders, including Athens International Airport, we are members of the board of directors in Marketing Greece. So this gave us the opportunity to work very closely and somehow be part of the destination marketing strategy. And in 2016, we had lots of campaigns with Marketing Greece. Some of them you can see here. Unfortunately, there is no time to go through them. I have to mention, though, that when we started the trilogy, perhaps you're an Athenian too, in 2014, we also had Aci Europe by our side to try and get other European airports on board and promote this particular destination marketing campaign for Athens. Now, 2016 has been a very important step because City of Athens jumped in. So we had what we called Athens Tourism Partnership, City of Athens, Marketing Greece, Aegean, and Athens International Airport. This was not an institutional partnership. However, we aligned our goals. And this was an important step for Athens because our goal at the time was to try and promote the destination, to promote our city, a city break year-round destination, because we are a metropolitan airport. It's not like, relying on the seasonal traffic. We had to do something about the traffic on a year-round basis. And in 2000, at the end of 2018, an institutional partnership was established. This is what we call, this is Athens and Partners, we called it at the time. This is Athens, is the abbreviated version nowadays. So there we had a memorandum of understanding among all the stakeholders, not only the Athens Tourism Partnership, which evolved to be This is Athens, but also all the other tourism and aviation stakeholders therein. The commitment that we had when we signed this memorandum of understanding back at the end of 2018 was to try and invest on an annual basis. Each member is investing on destination marketing and trying to promote Athens as a destination, but we also we were also committed to 2 steps ahead. And you can see here the 2 layers of the pyramid here. I don't have any wording here because the next one after destination marketing is destination development and destination management. And I hope I will get up to the end of my presentation and show you the last slide to show what I mean. So this was the commitment that we took back in 2018. And in the beginning of 2019, we started planning all these 3 let's say, different lines of action: destination marketing, destination development, destination management. Before going to what happens in 2020 and 2021, just a snapshot of the results of this alignment of goals for the promotion of Athens as a city break, a year-round destination. Obviously, these were not the destination marketing actions were not the only causes for this development that you can see here in the numbers of foreign residents international arrivals. These foreign residents international arrivals, this term is a technical term which practically means tourists, foreign visitors in Athens. And you can see the spectacular development from, let's say, 2012. We had 2.6 million arrivals of foreign international residents. And we ended up in 2019 with almost 6.5 million. It was a spectacular year of development back at the time. However, when we were ready with all our plans and strategic in terms of destination marketing and development and management, the pandemic occurred. So we had to somehow recalibrate our strategy in 2020 during the pandemic. I like to call it during COVID, the DC era, and we are still in that particular era. So we thought that we couldn't proceed with a strategic action at the time because, as we all know and we have experienced, there were lockdowns, people were in the dreaming phase. As Andrew mentioned before, the appetite for travel was never lost, and we saw that in our market surveys as well, which especially during the pandemic were extended with specific focus groups that we call influencers in order to try and detect and identify the propensity for travel and other very important attributes that we would like to see. So we thought that maybe we should start with a destination awareness campaign based on empathy and solidarity. And this was the dreaming. We tried to address the dreaming phase in 2020. This was mainly a letter or messages signed by the city itself. This Love Athens is the signature of Athens. So we try to say, messages like counting the days that we meet again, or working out for the day we meet, or these kinds of actions that preempted the fact that at some point our visitors would be back, would come back. And at the same time, apart from this B2C destination awareness campaign, there was also the B2B campaign, which was letters of the city of Athens to other cities as well that were equally tormented by the pandemic. So our city sent, these kinds of messages in other cities like Rome, Paris, London, Milan, or many others, Cyprus as well, other non-European cities. And the main aim there was to create this, let's say, atmosphere of empathy and solidarity with other cities that would not have their visitors back at that point in time. In 2021, the situation was rather improved, especially in the case of Greece after mid-May. During the first months of 2021, we had the lockdowns again. But as soon as we began the summer season, we had already prepared targeted products in order to try and focus on the planning and booking phases for the travelers. And this is, of course, these were the audiences and the activities that we targeted. These were the outcome of all the market survey findings. So there's lots of data, there's lots of facts behind these particular audiences and these activities. As mentioned before, the younger generations seem to be more prone to travel, and this is also the outcome of the market surveys that we are having at the moment. Other important and very loyal segments of traffic in the case of Athens were friends and relatives and Greek diaspora. These also were a very loyal segment of traffic during the summer 2020, not only in 2021. And of course, digital nomads, this is a more, let's say, strategic approach where the Hellenic government is also involved, not only all the other stakeholders that are formulating the destination marketing strategy. And we came up with two, I would say, specific projects. The first one was the culture lovers, as we call them. The second, the sea and sun lovers. Why were these particular products? First of all, because culture is an inherent part of the Athenian brand. So we had the Athens and Epidaurus Festival, and there was a strategic cooperation for the summer 2021, trying to offer a specific package to the audiences that I mentioned before, airline tickets, hospitality and transportation, and accommodation. So there we have a cooperation with many stakeholders like the hoteliers, the airlines, of course, other stakeholders were involved as well. And sea and sun lovers, because this is the face of Athens that people know the least. Most of the people, when they think about Athens, they think about history and culture, but at the same time, there is a shore, there are beaches in 70 kilometers in the southern suburbs. So there we try to say to people, you can take advantage, you can benefit out of this package, and you can try and get to know Athens and try to have your sea and sun vacation there. And the last one, visiting friends and relatives and Greek diaspora, is a bigger project, far bigger than the airport, obviously, and certain other stakeholders, but we're getting there for 2022. There is a specific planning and design of a product for this specific segment of traffic. My last slide, I'm sorry that I talked so fast, but really there is a problem with time today. We are trying to move from destination marketing to destination development and management. This is the commitment that we had in our institutional partnership back in the end of 2018. So apart from promoting the destination, apart from shaping and designing all the destination awareness campaigns and developing targeted products and services, we are now in the process of moving one step ahead in destination development. What that practically means, it means that, for instance, we have an aligned goal with all the other stakeholders for Athens being promoted as a sustainable destination. This is a goal. We have an alignment there, and we hope that the pandemic will allow us to proceed with that from 2022 onwards. And of course, destination management, that's another big topic, because here we are discussing for the stakeholders alignment for the creation of high-level visitors experience from the moment they board the plane up to the moment when they will be back and boarding the plane to return to their country. But this is, again, this has to do with the letter E. So ABCD marketing, I think very shortly we will be in a position to be discussing about A, B, C, D, and E, airport marketing. And that's all from me. If I had to just outline some of the words, I would say synergies, alignment of goals, and lots of data, based on data for all the actions that we are undertaking. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ioanna. Ioanna Papadopoulou, Director of Communications and Airline Marketing at Athens Airport. Have a nice day and have a good lunch,
thank you so much.
With Emirates. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now let's move on to Malta, to Sandy Vella, Traffic Development Manager at Malta International Airport. I can say that this European webinar looks like moving from a city to another city in Europe. Looks like more than a European Song Contest. So let's move to Malta. And Sandy, we heard something about a lot of things from Expedia, something the experience from Olbia Airport and from Athens Airport. Malta Airport is, I can say, one of the spotlights in the Mediterranean. It was especially true for the summer 2021. Can you explain? Can you explain us what did you do till now with the pandemic? How did you manage that, and what are the next steps for the airport?
Okay, good morning, everyone, first of all, and thank you to Silvio and Mario for the invitation. So my role at the airport is route development. I'm the main point of contact between the airport and the airlines which operate to Malta. We are mainly an inbound destination. Of course, we rely on tourists coming to Malta because Malta is a very small island. So the volumes of people actually traveling out are very, very small numbers. This setup of how we operate is a little bit different to what Mario explained. In essence, all of the factors are there. We just have a different way of doing it, which is very interesting to see, of course, how each and every airport differs in their approach. So we are also in our department in very close contact with the main tourism stakeholders, and this being the Ministry of Tourism and the Malta Tourism Authority. So when we do approach airlines to develop new routes or perhaps improve their product or increase frequencies to Malta, we do this in collaboration with the Tourism Board. Of course, Malta is in a unique position because we're an island state, right? We differ, although we're an island, we're not, you cannot really compare us to the Greek islands because we are a year-round destination. We are the main gateway to the island. 98% of tourists come by air, just 2% travel by sea. So of course, it makes sense that we collaborate with the Tourism Board and with the Ministry of Tourism. We align our strategies and then together approach airlines collectively to reach ultimately one goal: for us to increase passenger numbers and for the tourism industry to increase incoming tourists. Lately, of course, in the last 2 years, it's no secret, it's been a very big challenge. Our role has changed drastically. We went from attending conferences and fairs, selling Malta as a destination in a time that aviation and tourism was booming. In 2019, we had 7 million passengers at the airport, which is a significant number for us considering our size. And then, of course, just overnight, just as everyone else experienced, everything changed. So from a route development perspective, it went from contacting airlines and maintaining the relationship to grow our schedule, to contacting airlines to explain about travel restrictions, to explain that they actually cannot come to Malta, you know, to basically damage control, as you can imagine. As we move away from that, hopefully, and as the world and Europe starts to recover, we started to communicate how good Malta was doing in terms of vaccination rates and why people should come back to Malta, what are the pros and cons. Obviously, Andrew mentioned as well in his presentation that domestic travel was booming. This was a con for us. Obviously, we do not have domestic travel. The Italian market is considered our domestic travel because the flights are so close, but obviously still a different country. And Italy was actually one of the markets which were the most hesitant to travel internationally. So yes, our message changed. Together with the Tourism Board, we kept in touch definitely with the airlines, and also their message had changed. It was more targeted towards how safe Malta was and is as a destination, why you should come because, you know, the weather is great and leisure travel was the first thing that was coming back, because obviously business travel will take some time to recover. And yes, so the overall topic changed, but it was very important, as some others mentioned in their presentations, to remain visible at the same time. It was important that you just don't go completely off the radar, although there was so much uncertainty regarding tourism and travel. I think that passengers had to see the destination and, you know, the name out there, because ultimately there was still competition. Once things started to bounce back, we were closely monitoring Greece, for example, who really had a good summer, and similar destinations to ours.
Thank you, Sandy Vella from Malta. Virginia Lee, I want to involve you now, but first of all, I want also to ask you, because you are from ACI Europe, so Airport Council International Europe, but we heard about the experiences. We heard some numbers from the last summer. But I have to say that the last summer in Europe was different because we had different waves of recovery. I remember that Malta probably was one of the first airports, first destinations to recover, and then something happened between with the infections in Malta for the incoming tourism, and then all the traffic moved to Spain, but something different, something similar happened to Spain a few weeks later, and then all the people moved to Greece, and then the same thing happened to Greece, and then to Italy. So we had this summer with different waves of infections, but also of recovery. How did you manage that, or at least how could you explain us that thing from the Airport Council International point of view? And I know that you have also some numbers for us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, one of the roles that we have here at ACI Europe is, of course, to collate all the passenger traffic data from our members, and we do represent over 90% of the commercial air traffic across 55 countries. So it is a very relevant snapshot. We did actually put out some data just last week showing our most recent figures. These were in fact for October. It was the full month of October. And if that showed anything, it was that this recovery is incredibly fragile and it's incredibly uneven. And one of the things that we can really see from the data that's coming in now is that, yes, there was some sort of recovery happening briefly across summer seasons. And that's particularly pronounced on islands, where in fact we did have that brief moment of recovery for some tourism season. It was very brief, it was a very short window. And what we can also see during that period of time is that the international hubs suffered because it's the long haul traffic that isn't really bouncing back. Now, what's the denominator in all of this? What can we take away from this? It's the travel restrictions. And that's a really important role for us as the trade association for the airports, that we do pull together everybody's experiences and support them in talking to governments about harmonization. Because unless we have that harmonization, we're going to see this patchwork of restrictions. And when we're dealing with the patchwork, we see this very fragile, uneven recovery. Now, just one very important point to make on that, I think, I'm aware we're very short on time now, but when we put out, when we collated all this data and we put it out last week, and it's for October, already by the time we were crafting the press release to announce this data, we had this new variant and everything had changed again. And if there's one thing we can see now with the data that's coming back in, it's again how very fragile and rocky this is. So we can't take any of this for granted, and actually underneath it all is the travel restrictions. And that's what we need to see, risk-based harmonization. And that's when we see things start to even out.
Virginia, which I have to remind is speaking from Brussels, another city in Europe in this webinar. But do you think that for the next summer, of course, putting aside the new variants or how this pandemic is going, is moving forward, do you think that the digital certificate, the digital green certificate, COVID certificate from the European Commission could help the tourism to go back to the 2019 levels, at least for a month or a couple of months? Or do you think that we need more tools as an international, as an open market, we need more tools than the digital certificate?
Well, I think for sure the digital COVID certificate is a model for how it can work. And once we got that in place, we got the harmonization between the member states, that really did serve as a platform for strong recovery. it's really obvious when we look at the data and we see what happened to those European countries who aren't actually member states. The UK, Ireland, Finland, actually, that were particularly badly hit by little pockets of travel restrictions that really held them back in that development. So we've got a really good template there. And in fact, we often say on the international platform, when we're talking to our colleagues in Asia Pacific, when we're talking to our colleagues in Latin America, we will show this certificate as a model as to how it can be done. Now, that we're now facing, of course, a situation where countries are trying to tackle this idea of a third vaccination, of a booster vaccination. And I think airports across Europe are frankly bracing to see what's going to happen, because we are urging everybody, as is the World Health Organization, to take a risk-based approach, to not knee-jerk into restrictions when you've already got in-community transmission. We just don't know how that's going to play out, and it's concerning. All we can say now is we hope that everybody has learned the lessons of the last 20 months and actually take a proportionate and harmonized approach to this.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. I want to ask to Andrew van der Vels. Andrew, are you still there?
I am. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, you mentioned in your presentation how the latest generations of tourists are more sensible towards the environment, the sustainability. Do you think this is going to play a role in when the tourism will start again? We hope in 2022 or 2023. Speaking more about the biggest cities, because we had till 2019 we had this over tourism problem with some also European and Italian cities. Do you think that is going to shape that approach from those cities, as Venice or Barcelona or Madrid or London or Paris? They are going to, to avoid the over tourism.
I believe that it's very much in their interest, and I do believe it's in their strategies as well. Most of these destinations have a 2030 strategy that's been outlined already pre-pandemic. So I suspect, and knowing from some colleagues who work in the industry, they will stick to those strategies going towards 2030 and see this pandemic as a blip in that. I don't think they'll move away, and particularly Amsterdam amongst them as well, will not move away from their roles from the perspective of destination management, which I love the utilization of that, because it is no longer just this promotion. So I do believe that they will move towards that and create a more sustainable future for their destinations. Now that's not just in terms of restricting travel to those destinations, because that's obviously much more difficult. You can't go down a road, arguably you can't go down a road of quota for in a similar way that we do with fishing. But you can start thinking about sort of spread, seasonal spread, regional spread of those tourism based on interest. So rather than having, and that's a job of those destinations, to get that message across to that audience at the right time. And it's an educational process to audiences of the future. I mentioned the alpha generation, the ones who were born from 2010 onwards. It is as important to be, getting the content to that audience today, because they do have an influence. It's up to like 40–50% of the influence around where a family will travel. So how do you speak to an audience of that generation at this stage already? So there are many ways of looking at it. But to answer your question, I do believe that it is on the minds of travelers of today and of the future, that I guess we all feel the vulnerability and the fragility of travel and what it means to us. And I think it's brought much closer to us all in the last couple of years, and the importance of the planet in its own right, and I don't mean just from an environmental, ecological point of view, but also from a cultural and social and socio as well. So I think these are all aspects that will be looked at from destination management across the globe. And I think the audiences of the future will be receptive to that. And
some airports in Italy closed during the lockdown in 2020. But how have you changed your approach with the airlines on one side, and how the approach of the how can I say, travel chain have changed the approach with you as an.
Okay, so in terms of the airlines, our approach hasn't changed that much, apart from what I mentioned earlier with regards to communicating the NOTAMs or the restrictions in place. We're ultimately still working on our network, which is our main aim, right? We are working on rebuilding it. So we did, of course, lose a couple of airlines in the process in the last 2 years. We're working on getting them back. We're working on recovering frequency because ultimately our schedule is there. It's just much more diluted. So obviously, if an airline used to operate perhaps a daily operation, we now have a situation where they operate 3 or 4 times a week. So that's important for us to get back. There are a number of ways in which we're doing it, but of course, a number of challenges remain as well. The ways in which we do it. So thankfully, we have resumed in-person conferences. The last couple of months, we attended the Roots conference, the Slots conference, and we started face-to-face meetings again, which is a very important factor of our job. Ultimately, it's all about relationship management and speaking to the client and seeing how you can develop business together. We're obviously highlighting the benefits of traveling to Malta and why should the airline come here and not anywhere else. We do have an incentive program in place as well, so that definitely helps. Our program also targets seasonality, so there is more benefits of operating in the winter season as well. And of course, we also rope in, as I mentioned earlier, our partners at the tourism board, so that where there is an opportunity to develop a new route or to improve a route, they can work together both with their main office in Malta, but also with their offices throughout Europe to market the destination, the flight, work on filling the seats as well. With regards to your comment about the airport specifically, it's not particularly my area, but of course I know that the customer services team, together with other airport stakeholders, have had to put a lot of changes in place with regards to safety, document checks, which is another big topic. And I know that my colleagues in the marketing department, together with customer services, launched a secret passenger program, which is basically where anyone can log into our website and provide any feedback in which we can improve the customer journey. We acknowledge, of course, that we are a very important part of the traveler's journey because we're the first and last impression for people on their holiday, and we don't take this lightly. You know, it's important, especially in these times, that when people arrive, they feel safe, they don't feel overcrowded, they have their own space, and I think that's it shows, you know, that we are working on this. Recently, we also won an ACI Customer Accreditation Award just a few weeks ago, so we're on the right track in that aspect.
Sadie, I want also to ask you, you are, I mean, the traffic development manager at the Malta International Airport, but you mentioned also the role of the Tourism Authority of Malta. Do you think that to recover or to try to recover faster that traffic that you had, you and the other destinations in the Mediterranean had previous pre-COVID, do you think that the tourism authority, the national or the local tourism authority, I'm thinking also about Sardinia, for example, or Athens, do you think they have to play a bigger role than 2019 to promote the destination, of course?
Yeah, I think their role was always important, but of course now more than ever, because we need to work on the recovery together. Obviously, it's a bit easier in our case because we're one airport and one tourism authority. So of course, I acknowledge that it's not possible for everybody to have this relationship. So it is our USP, you know, from one perspective. But yes, it's their role is extremely important, I feel.
Virginia, Lee, I move to you because we we started this tough and difficult winter for the European airports, but can you tell us what is doing and what is the thinking of ACI Europe to try to survive to this, I can say, third winter of toughness, of difficulties with this pandemic?
I think that
sorry to interrupt you, just to put in a context, because we into 2020 we saw a lot of countries helping their airlines, but the approach with the airports, I mean, wasn't the same. They gave less money, and I remember a presentation from Oliver Jankovic from a few months ago that saw the imbalance of the state aid towards the airlines and the airport. So that is something, a further element of difficulty for the airports.
The state aid question has been an incredibly fraught one. And yes, you're right. Most presentations from ACI Europe do include an infographic about the imbalances in state aid. There's been a lot of money has flowed down to the airlines. And I think there is perhaps an assumption that if you help the airline, you're helping the airport. Not true. And the money has not been flowing in the same way. If we are to look, however, to solutions rather than necessarily just beating the drum constantly about the problems, which is our job as ACI Europe, but when we look at a more solutions-based conversation, one of the things that we were talking about very recently at our annual Congress was the need for a complete business model reset moving forwards. And I think a lot of these messages are very positive ones, because some of the changes that we've seen in the way airports now look to the future were very nascent, the beginning of ideas, perhaps before this pandemic hit. Things like the hyper-connected airport, the touchless airport, the seamless passenger journey, and so on. And this whole digitalization and indeed the sustainability question has been accelerated beyond belief by this pandemic. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We are seeing so many airports still investing in sustainable solutions through the Airport Carbon Accreditation Scheme, still accelerating their digitalization of their processes and investing in this. But I think in all of this, Leonard, to be quite honest, the key word is investment. Where is the money coming from for all of this? And it will be a different equation for every single airport, because it's such a wide variety of business models out there. But we don't think there's actually going to be a full recovery in capital investment capabilities until around 2032. That's a long way into the future. So resetting this business model and thinking about how we can ring fence what we've got, but have smarter, more efficient airports moving forwards, that's going to be the big challenge. Not all the messages in there are doom and gloom. I think there's a lot of positive behaviors and practices ahead that we're learning from in this pandemic. It would be very interesting to have this conversation in a year's time and see exactly where that's got to once we genuinely have learned to live with this pandemic and with this new normal.
Virginia, but as we heard from Athens, from Olbia, from also a little bit Alghero and Malta, this pandemic maybe changed a little bit the role of the airports, seen till 2019 as, I mean, a gateway or like a touch point for half an hour, 1 hour, a couple of hours in 1 week or 2 weeks journey. But we, from the experiences we heard, we are seeing that the airports are playing a major role in this last couple of years, maybe in 2022, as a support, as a contributor of a traffic recovery, even from a how can I say, social point of view, even from an image point of view, with the social media posts or videos on YouTube or posts on Facebook, on Twitter. Do you think that also the approach of the government should change towards the airport, not consider them just only just an infrastructure where the passengers go through, but also that's something that could help the tourism. Because the approach in Italy is like, okay, you are, I mean, a building, airplanes arrive there, airplanes depart from there with people, and just that's it. But don't you think that maybe the approach of the governments should change towards the airports?
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a win-win situation. The more partnerships we see, the stronger the output is going to be for both parties. It's interesting to me that when we talk about the societal acceptability of the airport and the role that it plays in the community, it's almost an add-on. You know, we can even go as far as to say that I think it should be our starting point from here on in. It is very true that airports are fixed infrastructure, but having said that, they are living, breathing organisms. And I think there's a really interesting example when we talk about what happened as a sector when the pandemic first struck. Because of course we saw the passenger traffic numbers just fall off a cliff, and we were all watching it in horror like everybody else, but also wanted to bring together the aviation to show some solidarity and show their communities the role that was being played by the airport. And very quickly, a theme emerged, a brand was created, just we are aviation. And across the entire aviation system, the airports, the airlines, and indeed some of the tourism organizations and the authorities on the ground were adopting this hashtag and just posting photo after photo after photo of relief work, of flights coming in with vaccinations, of airport workers who'd been furloughed, suddenly helping distribute aid on the ground in their communities. And it is that business to people aspect of the airport that came to the fore at the very start of the pandemic. Now, moving forwards, of course, the partnerships with governments and airports have a much more, I think, economic edge to them as well as the societal. But again, the two things go hand in hand. If you crack one, you're well on the way to cracking the other. And I really hope that's going to be one of the positive learnings out of this whole experience.
Thank you, Virginia. And we are going to end this webinar, but I have a last question for Andrew van der Veld that maybe hoped to escape for the last question. Andrew, from the Expedia point of view, from an expert point of view, as you see the big picture in Europe and the world, what do you think would be the best advice what is the best advice you will want to give to the airports and to tourism authorities in Europe, for free, of course?
Everything's for free. I think Virginia put her finger on it. You know, it is incredibly fragile where we are right now. It's volatile. All those great adjectives to describe the situation we're in. My advice would be to not go dark, full stop. That light blue line at the top, and Malta is a perfect example of that. They came back strong. We've partnered with them very, very well. Other destinations across Europe as well is don't go dark, because people are dreaming, are booking, are shopping. Water will find a way. Consumers will find a way of travel. Business travel will come back slowly as well, but the leisure travel, it's 2 years of pent up demand. So I would say watch, learn from data, because it is quick. You can see that the booking windows are very short. So consumers are reacting so adapt your marketing strategies, your approach, your content in a similar way. So let data be your guide, but be visible, be out there, because when things change, and we've seen that, maybe I'll leave you with that. When the tourism channel opened up between Australia and New Zealand last year, it was back in the last year, there was a over 1,000% increase in bookings overnight. That is not based on waiting for inspiration on where should I go. That is a group of people that are waiting for that opening of that channel. And that's going to be similar as we go into this continued volatility, is they will find a way. So be prepared, give them the content whilst they're dreaming, because when that gate opens, they will book, and it will be too late to a certain extent to try and inspire them to travel to your destination.
Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew van der Velds, Global Senior Director of Business Development at Expedia Media Solutions, joining us from London. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks to Sandy Vella, Traffic Development Manager at Malta International Airport, joining us from Malta. Thanks to Virginia Lee, Director, Media and Communications at Airport Council International Europe. Thanks previously to Ioanna Papadopoulou, Director of Communications and Airline Marketing at Athens Airport, that joined us previously. And thanks to Silvio Pipobello, CEO of Olbia Airport, Fabio Gallo, CFO and Business Development Director at Alghero Airport, and thanks to Mario Garau, Routes Development Manager at Olbia Airport. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching us, and we will see in another webinar. Honestly, I hope in an in-person event. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.